All right, let's start talking about what this default application looks like. First, we pull in the Flutter material.dart package, which is essentially the base package that includes all the material theming and styles and everything else that we're going to use. If we can kind of see inside of the editor here, if we don't have it, a lot of things just become not workable, right? I mean, your code no longer knows what a stateless widget is, so that's being provided. Run app is being provided or implemented within that library. The widgets and build context and theme data, colors, you get color swatches from there. The stateful widgets are defined inside of your material app, right? So let's go ahead and put that back in there. And let's see, so I do an undo, but that did not seem to work. So I could also do a command, oops. Okay, so if I do an alt return, I can go ahead and import it gives me options where I can get run app from, and material.dart is one of them. And so now we're back in place here. So, all right, this is good. So let's keep moving on. So our main application, it basically uses this double arrow syntax, which in Dart says to execute this function, run app and my app. Okay, so let's go ahead and go down to my app. My app extends the stateless widget. So the stateless widget is essentially a widget which does not keep track of any sort of state. So it's just going to be your blank, in this case, your blank app. And in there's going to be a build method. And that build method is going to return the material app with a title called Flutter Demo and a theme where we're going to pass in the theme data with primary swatch color blue. So with that, we'll have our home is going to be generated by my homepage, and we'll pass to that the title Flutter Demo Homepage. So if we go down to my homepage, which is what's going to be populating essentially your material app, you'll see that we have a stateful widget. So what is a stateful widget? A stateful widget is one where the user can actually interact with the widget and make changes to it. So you'll see pretty soon, in this case, we're actually implementing a counter. So in this case, we're passing into there's a constructor. In that, the my homepage constructor it accepts an argument this.title, which is what we passed in up here. So this is how we knew that we could pass in this.title, or how my homepage knows to receive this.title. And then we define a local variable called title, which is a string. So we're going to override the page state or the create state with our own my homepage state, which we'll define over here. So my homepage state extends the state class, which really this is where we're going to end up saving all of our actions and interactions and things like that. In here, we're defining a local variable called _counter, which that underscore means it's a private variable, and it is set to 0. And we're going to have a method called increment counter, which also starts with an underscore, so it's a private method. And what that's going to do is it's going to do set state. Set state is actually defined. It's something that we implement. So this calls set state, which tells the Flutter framework that something has changed in the state, which causes it to rerun the build method below so that the display can reflect the updated values. So whenever we do set state, the app essentially refreshes where it needs to and runs again. So what we do is we set the state and counter plus plus. So we increment the counter number. So it's 0 will go to 1, 1 goes to 2, so on and so forth. So that was the first private method that was in here. And the build method is what is going to be called when every time increment counter happens. We will rebuild our widget and display the most recent thing. So build is, again, it's rerun every time set state is called. So for instance, by the increment counter method above, the Flutter framework has been optimized to make rerunning build methods fast so that you can just rebuild anything that needs updating rather than having to individually change instances of widgets. So we're going to return the scaffold, which is the scaffold is another method. So scaffold is a little bit more generic than a material app. So scaffold takes an app bar in it, we can call the title. So this sets the app bar value, or at least the title inside the app bar value, the value for my home page. We just set our app bar title, yeah. And then our body, we're gonna basically, in this case, we're gonna center a column. So the child of center is column, and column basically lays things out up and down, arranging them vertically. Main axis alignment says that we're aligning in the center, so the column, everything will be centrally centered up and down the column. And then the children are an array of widgets, and in this case they're going to be text widgets. So we'll have the text that says you have pushed that button this many times, and then we're going to go ahead and return the counter variable. And you'll see that we put that inside a string with the $_counter to represent that we want the value of that variable displayed, printed out onto the page. And the style, we're going to theme of context, text theme, display 1. So that is a prepackaged theme. And then we'll have under that, under the center, there's going to be a floating action button, which is a special method itself. And what that's going to basically generate a button. And whenever it's pressed, it's going to call increment counter. Remember, that's the method that was defined up here, which calls set state, which calls build. And the tooltip will be increment, so that would show that, instruct the user that they can increment the value. And the child, what's actually going to be built inside of this floating action button is going to be an icon, and it's going to be icons.add. Icons.add is it's an icon that is simply given to you by the material library, and you'll see over here it actually shows you, it looks like a little plus sign inside of a circle, which you can't see because of my dark gray theme, but that is essentially what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Pixel emulator. Well, let's see if we can run it. So this is now compiling my code, initializing Gradle, and hopefully in a minute here it will have compiled the entire package and sent it out to my emulator. Resolving all the dependencies. It's creating the app. It's telling me Flutter supports hot reload, which is great. And here it is. So we've got the Flutter demo homepage. You have so that's your app bar up here. It is in fact color blue, as was specified, as was passed in through the theme data. Let's see if we can make this play nicely here. Okay, so, and the Flutter demo homepage was passed in through the home variable into the my homepage constructor. That title was passed in over here, create state, my homepage. The counter was set to 0, which is why it's initialized here. And when we click this blue add button, which is the one that was set over here, the floating action button, that should call our increment value, and we'll see that that value went up to 1. It was redrawn on there. So our increment counter called a set state increased the counter number, and set state automatically called the build method again, which then updated what we see here. So we can see that that worked. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer.